For anyone out there that's wanting to start a business, or you have a side hustle right now that you're wanting to pursue full time, I would say that the safest way to do it is while you have your job, absolutely test things, try things, like experience, explore, read, learn, consume, become skilled. But there's a certain point where when you like, yes, this is what I want to do, you have to rip the Band-Aid off.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inner Wealth, the Forbes Ignite podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Cacal, CEO of Forbes Ignite, and every week I'll be sharing with you my conversations with unique, creative, and innovative people across all different industries. These are people who are intellectually curious explorers who are also redefining what it means to be successful today. From personal to professional, we cover it all to understand what drives our guests to blaze their own trails and create nimble solutions within the industries that touch each of our lives. Hey, Joe, how's it going? Thank you so much for being here. It's so wonderful to see you.
Hey, Nicole, I'm super excited to be here. It's great to see you again, and I'm really looking forward to our episode.
All of my conversations with you have always been so exciting and informational for me. I always learn so much from you. So I thought I definitely have to do a podcast episode with you sometime sooner rather than later. So I know you wear a lot of different hats. You're constantly on the road and you're really busy. So tell me, what have you been up to lately?
A lot. So first of all, thank you for doing this. We have had several conversations. And so when you asked me to do this podcast, I was really excited. And I've loved looking into the work you're doing as well with this whole inner wealth movement, because everything we do is always about starting from within, right? So as of late, I've been, as you mentioned, on the road a lot. I'm probably gone from home on average 20 to 25 days a month. It is a grind, but it's interesting and it's not cliche, but when you genuinely love what you do, I see it as a blessing and not a burden. And so I feel very fortunate that not only do I get to do what I love, but I get to meet the amount of people I meet, connect with the amount of people I'm connecting with, and absolutely shift their frame of reference, their way of thinking, and kind of open them up to, a new world. So we do a lot of training and consulting. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the company and how it all started, but we really specialize in all things mental health, de-escalation, self-care, wellness. And in the first responder realm, there's this thing known as the sequential intercept model. And we kind of specialize in every one of those intercept points from 0 to 5, of whether it's consulting on something, creating programs, or training specific groups in how to better do their job, but also be more effective in meeting the people that they're dealing with on a daily basis.
That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to dive into that. But before we do, I'd love to know, because your background is so rich and I love your story. So tell us more about your personal and professional journey to where you got today.
Yeah, Nicole, I wish my background was rich. So no, it's fascinating. For those that don't know, I was featured in an Emmy award-winning documentary, Ernie and Joe, Crisis Cops, and it's on HBO right now. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend watching it. There's a lot of history and personal story in that film as well. So I born from a Navy father, but what's interesting is I have zero recollection or memory before the age of 7. So at 7, my world changed and I started experiencing abuse, sexual abuse, molestation. And then that triggered my father to have to get out of the Navy because he was married to my mother, but she was having an affair with a guy who was abusing myself or abusing me rather. But anyway, so that really changed kind of the trajectory of my life. I didn't go to school my 3rd grade year. I was in therapy 3 days a week, in and out of court, doing a custody battle. And so it was a mess for a while. And then I went to multiple schools before I finally graduated. So I became really good at meeting people, but terrible at keeping people. And this is in the 90s where we didn't have social media and phones and ways to really stay engaged. And so I was really good at that initial introduction, make friends fast. But then once I left a school, which would happen every year or two, I wouldn't really keep them. And that kind of created problems later on in my life. And so then I am misguided, minimal parenting, a lot of physical abuse throughout my teenage years. And then my girlfriend at the time, I was with her from 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. Her parents finally took me in because I kind of left home. My father was moving to Houston. I refused to go with him. And so my girlfriend's parents took me in, and I tell people I was a junior. I didn't know how else to thank them. I didn't have a job. And so I got their daughter pregnant. And that's a joke. And I laugh. And I only say it because we all get along well now. I don't recommend it. It made life very hard. But I love my daughter. She's 22 now. But that choice kind of changed the trajectory of my life, right? And this is important, and we'll get to this, but I never wanted to go into the military. I wanted to go to college to play soccer. I was kind of a stud in soccer growing up in upstate New York, and it was my thing. I loved it, and I knew that that was what I wanted to pursue. But when you have a kid at 18 years old and you're a senior in high school, it kind of changes things. And so I joined the Marine Corps. This was in 2000, pre 9/11. The world was mostly at peace. And then 9/11 happens. And again, there we go again. Now I'm thrusted over into Afghanistan. I come back, thrusted into Iraq. I was with the initial push into Iraq back in 2003. So that was very traumatic as well. And you take that experience of combat exposure, saturation, coupled with unprocessed childhood trauma. And what do you have but a beautiful recipe for a police officer? And I say that jokingly, but it's a sad reality that I've learned, that there are many first responders, not just law enforcement, but there's many first responders that end up in these professions because it's a super low barrier of entry. You don't have to have college degrees. You just have to be a relatively decent person in decent shape and then pass some tests and you're good to go. And so because of that low barrier of entry, it is a great profession. You get great benefits and a pension and all this stuff if you make it to the end. But again, I had a lot of unprocessed trauma. And so now I get into the police department. And why did I join the police department? Because I was 22, no college degree, minimal life experience, just don't die. But the reason I got out of the Marine Corps, Nicole, was because combat wrecked me. I didn't like being around death. I didn't like being in firefights. I didn't like having to take another human being's life and being celebrated for it. Nothing about that felt natural to me. So I knew like this isn't for me. I don't want to do this. Okay, I got the experience and I served my country, whatever that even means. Great. But now I come back and then I joined the police department, and my first year on the job, one day before my 1-year anniversary, I get into a fight with this guy who was loaded on cocaine, 7.5 minutes of fighting with him. And when cover finally showed up, because I was by myself for 7 minutes, 24 seconds. And then as soon as my cover officer showed up, it took 4 of them to get him into custody. And as soon as the handcuffs went on him, he died. And so here we go again, surrounded by death, being a part of this, not liking it. And that really sent me into a deep, deep, dark depression where personally I started just kind of doing everything I could to wreck my life.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Joe. I know that couldn't have been easy. And I really appreciate you sharing the different stages in life. And each and different stage has led you to where you got today. And all the experiences have afforded you to be able to help other people. And so I was wondering, throughout your childhood, through the Marines, through the police department, who are some of your role models that you can say really helped you through these dark times?
Yeah, so that was a huge problem for me early on. And one of the interesting things about my journey to go back to the police department is for the first several years I was on patrol, and there was this interesting moment that happened. I remembered it like it was yesterday. I was working overnights on the south side of San Antonio, and I do a traffic stop on this guy. He takes off running. Turns out it was a stolen vehicle. Well, he takes off running on foot. So I get out, start chasing him and calling it on the radio. And I remember we're all pursuing this individual who's trying to get away from us. Mm-hmm. And I start calling in other officers. They all show up. We end up catching the guy. And we're standing around fist bumping and high-fiving. And I got him in the back of my police car. We're driving to jail. And I remember thinking it was so clear. I was just who the hell have I become that we just stood in a circle celebrating this, we just hunted a human, essentially. We just hunted down this human being that was trying to get away from us. Yes, he did wrong. Yes, he violated a law. Yes, he absolutely committed a crime. And he's trying to get away from us, and we catch him. But we're all standing around celebrating this person's worst day. And so I remember feeling bad. I felt guilty. How am I, what difference am I actually making right now doing this? And luckily, shortly thereafter, the mental health unit was formed on the police department. I applied, I got in right away. And that's where I spent the last 11 years of my career. But what's fascinating about this, to go to your question specifically, I didn't have any mentors. I was such a lost soul, just on this hamster wheel of life, doing the same thing every day over and over, miserable, again, actively working to destroy my life and making terrible choices. And then I get on the mental health unit, and I tell people for the first 2 years on the mental health unit, I was a total hypocrite. I show, as so many people are, sadly, but I show up every day on the job telling people, if you would just go to the doctor, if you would just take your medications as prescribed, if you would just go to therapy as they recommend, if you would just do all these things in your life, you wouldn't have to deal with the police. And I'm trying to give them all this great counsel because, like so many people, we have so much great advice for everyone else, but that advice we don't take ourselves. And I wasn't. And so for 2 years, I was telling everyone how they should live their life and what they should do. And then I would go home. I was acutely suicidal. I was going through another divorce. I was drinking way too much, just trying to sleep to kind of quiet the noise in my head. And I was suffering. And then I would show up the next day, put a smile on, and just go right back through it. Why? Because in high school, my nickname was actually Smiley, and I was miserable. My first suicidal thought was at 15 years old, but no one knew. Teachers knew. Looking back now, what I know is that some of the teachers knew, and I love them for the encouragement they gave me to keep me out of my house, to get involved in extracurriculars, sports, theater, play, all that stuff. But they were protecting me. But the other students had no idea. And so they thought I was this like jovial, outgoing, happy guy when I was absolutely miserable. And now I'm seeing the same trend as an adult, a young adult, but in my 27, 28 years old, I'm a mess. And so it wasn't until my second divorce. By the time I was 33 years old, I had 3 divorces. I have 4 children from 3 women, paying over $3,000 a month in child support. And again, I'm the mental health guy. Like, how does that make any sense, right? And so again, I share that because there's so, whether you're in a mental health unit or not, even just in policing and first responder roles, consider the advice you give to other people and then really look at your own life, really look at your own house. How's everything in your own life? And then what advice are you actually giving people when you show up to work? I think that matters because I think people can see through, they can really see through you and know if you're leading with authenticity or if you're just saying words.
Right.
My second divorce, wife's leaving me. She's telling me, hey, I hate you, but something is seriously wrong. Like you need help. And that's when I went to the VA and I've never left. It's been over 11 years now. And I still am involved with the VA. It saved my life. But what I realized, Nicole, was as I started really diving into therapy and helping myself, I became so much more effective at helping other people. And the more I learned about myself and why I was the way I was and why I was doing it, again, what I tell people, and this is an important thing to understand, is trauma does not remove the idea of knowing right and wrong. I knew what I was doing was wrong. But what trauma does is trauma creates apathy to consequences. Like I just didn't care. I didn't value my own life. I didn't think I deserved love. I certainly didn't love myself. And so of course I'm going to go self-sabotage and work to wreck my life because I don't care. And if I get in trouble, I don't care. If I get caught, I don't care because I don't deserve good things to happen, is how I thought. And so a lot of work later, a lot of years later, I kind of became the mental health whisperer, as some would refer to me. And I became really good at this because as I was helping myself, I could see myself in other people and I could see other people in me. And I saw that we as human beings, beyond race, beyond gender, beyond beliefs, beyond anything else that exists, which I call distractions, we are all human beings. And I think we are far more alike than not. And if we could work intentionally to focus on what we have in common instead of what makes us different, I think that's how we actually move the needle moving forward. Now, that's a long way to get to your actual question. Who inspired me? There's 3 things. I call it this like triangle of what changed my life. Tom Bilyeu is a guy that I have an absolute man crush on. This is a guy that I've watched all his videos. I'm so fascinated by his story. I love what he's doing. And for those that don't know Tom Bilyeu, he created Quest Nutrition with some partners. They sold it for $1 billion. Now he has a group called Impact Theory. It's a media company on YouTube, a couple million subscribers. And his goal is to create the next Disney. Specifically, he wants to use anime and comics and storytelling to help kids learn about a growth mindset to break free from a fixed mindset, because what he's realized is that the single biggest predictor in our country to predict the success of a child is based on their zip code. And that sucks. And so he's saying, look, if you have access to information and we can teach you about a growth mindset and thinking bigger than your circumstance, then you can really create a much richer future for yourself. So Tom Bilyeu, discovering Stoicism, this whole Greek philosophy, the mindset of how is it that if Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, Socrates, all these guys that were thought leaders back in 161 to 183 and around that area, thousands of years ago, but you read their writings and it still resonates true today. What I've learned is that while the world seems to evolve rapidly around us, human beings are still people and nothing has changed. We all want the same things. We all desire the same. We have the same intrinsic desires. And I think that the only thing that's really happened is we've lost our way and we've forgotten what's actually true, which is the universal truth is love. And we've kind of shifted away from that. We've become kind of self-absorbed and scared at the same time. And so we put on this representative self and it just all gets in the way. And then therapy is the third thing. Tom Bilyeu, Stoicism, therapy. Those three things completely changed my life.
Amazing. And I have to comment on what you said. That was so powerful that we need to focus on what we have more in common than what is different between us. And I have to say, you and I have a lot more in common than you think. And I joked in our previous conversation that that's a conversation for another time over a glass of wine or something like that. But I think your journey has really been incredible. And I bet you that that's what gave you the idea for SolutionPoint Plus, was it?
Partially. Yeah, it definitely gave me the courage. So, and I'll be quicker on this, but one of the things is part of my job on the police department was teaching these 40-hour crisis intervention trainings, which I saw the impact. I saw the resistance that people would come in on Monday, because again, teaching police officers how to de-escalate and understand mental health is not sexy, as we call it. It's like, and I use this example. If an officer had two choices, hey, your options are you either get to go to this week-long training, which is like shotgun school, breaching doors, pieing rooms, clearing buildings, or you get to go to a communication class that's going to teach you de-escalation and mental health. It would probably be a 9-to-1 ratio of the 9 would go to the breaching, shotgun, pieing, clearing rooms. 1 might go to mental health. Now, that's a problem for me because if you flip it, 90% of what they do is absolutely dealing with people needing that skill to communicate effectively and de-escalate human behavior. But we don't prioritize it because we've done such a terrible job of kind of sensationalizing the minutia of police work that there's such a draw to go do that high-speed stuff that, again, unless you're on a specialized unit, you're not really doing those things. And so why are we not doing a better job prioritizing the things that actually matter? So I knew there was a huge gap. I knew that there were a lot of people who didn't have access to this training. So when I started SolutionPoint Plus back in 2017 with Jesse, my partner, we had this vision that was so small, and it was just, we're going to go teach a 40-hour training. And that's what we did. Shout out to IVMF, the Institute for Veterans and Military Families out of Syracuse University. They have these phenomenal programs for veterans who want to get into entrepreneurship. And I knew nothing about business. Again, I really saw myself as like a really kind of not so intelligent individual. I didn't have any prestigious degrees. I didn't have an MBA. I don't know anything about accounting. And so what do I know about starting a business? Well, I went through IVMF, go to this program. It's free. It was incredible. I went to Texas A&M University and did 30 days online. Then they bring you out there. You do 9 days in person, like 16-hour days. And they basically cram a ton of information into you, give you access to their best people. And I left there on fire with confidence of like, I can do this. So I started the company. We started doing a couple schools a year. We were super small. We were crushing it, maybe making like, I don't know, $15,000 a year. It was great. And that was in 2017. But what I'm super excited about is, and this is what I tell people, because there are a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to start a business, but they have 1,000 reasons of why they can't, shouldn't, or it's not a good idea. And if you're waiting, you become paralyzed by the process of the unknown. And one of the issues is you're not going to figure it out. If you wait till you have a perfect plan, you're never going to get there. I still, to this day, 5.5 years into business, have no idea what I'm doing. I really genuinely have no clue what I'm doing. It's always about navigating and trying to solve the next problem, knowing the next problem is coming, not avoiding the problem. It's not about trying to like walk a landmine. It's like, no, I'm going to step on this mine and I've got to figure out how I'm going to strategically get off of it without it blowing up and it being a fatal error. And that's all you're doing in business, is avoiding the fatal error and learning about momentum and traction. Now, SolutionPoint Plus, 5 years later, I left my job voluntarily as a police officer in September of 2020. We had $12,000 of work lined up. That was it. That's not a safety net. I didn't get a pension because I left being a cop at 15 years. You have to do 20. So I didn't get a payout. I didn't get anything for my 15 years except a lot of experience. And then I had $12,000 of work. And I said, I'm just no longer happy. And to me, that was such an important piece because, again, all the internal work I had done, understanding a growth mindset, understanding like not playing small, understanding risk, I wanted to pursue it. And so, yeah, I only had $12,000 lined up of work and I left my career with 5 years to go before a pension. That was in September of 2020. We're now recording this in July of 2022. So it hasn't even been 2 years yet. And we're already over $1 million company since we've gone full time just this year. And we've grown 100% year over year since we started in 2017. And that's a testament to just understanding momentum, traction, and decision-making coupled with skill set.
That is incredible. And congratulations on your growth and all that you've learned. Because you're absolutely right. When people start a business, most of the time, they have no idea what they're doing. And that's okay. That's really okay. It's all about the learning process. And throughout all your experience, what I can tell is that it made you the most authentic servant leader. Because when you're working in crisis intervention and you're working with mental health, you're really helping those people that you need to authentically identify with. And I don't think that there's a substitute for experience. You can read about it in books, you can learn about it all day, but your 15 years of experience as a police officer and being in the Marines and throughout your therapy and childhood, that all led you to that point. And I really commend you for your courage to start your own business. And on the flip side of that, it affords you a lot of freedom to do what you want as well. So what does the freedom of being a business owner mean to you?
It means everything. It really is one of the most exciting parts. You know, like last year, Jesse and I both collectively decided, again, it was our first year without a safety net, without our job. We were told for years that we were wantrepreneurs, not entrepreneurs, because we just wanted to do this business, but we still had our safety net and we didn't understand that. And one of the things too that makes me think of this is when you're asking about like heroes, because now I have several, but there's two individuals specifically, Nick Ripplinger and Chris Cancelosi. I met both of these men. They're both entrepreneurs, really successful, and they're both military veterans. And I met them at a military veteran entrepreneurship conference. But to listen to the way they spoke about us and our business when we were nowhere near what they were envisioning. So those two men kept pushing me saying, Joe, you got to leave your job. You have to leave your job. And then once you start to realize that struggle, like you're going to figure out who you are. And it's like, wow, because they saw us as a multi-million-dollar a year business when we were making $70,000 a year. And I was like, that is 1,000% jump. There's no way I can see that in my mind, but they did. And now that we're there, it's like, wow, it makes sense. And so, you know, it's easy to sit back and be like, oh, well, because of luck or because of timing or because you got this or because you had this. And it's like, I promise you, Jesse and I both have similar stories. We come from nothing. No one in our family is wealthy. No one gave us accounting or financial advice or investing advice. We know nothing. And we were able to build a 7-figure business because we understood momentum and traction. So again, it's very important that you surround yourself with people that are either where you want to be. It's like the rule of thirds, right? I've heard this is a third of the people in your life should be people above you where you're trying to strive toward. A third of the people should be your equal peers. And then a third of your people should be people you're mentoring or helping along the way. And if you think about your life in those three sections of who you're spending your time with, again, because it's about doing good while doing good. And the freedom part is huge. You know, last year we said, hey, let's take off July and December. I could never do that with a full-time job. And, you know, you don't just get to take off 30 days at a time, twice a year. And now this year, because of the way business is, we've also scaled from just SolutionPoint Plus being myself and Jesse, to now we have 8 people.
Wow.
And now coordinating everyone's schedules and all this, we haven't taken off as much time, but we're doing it more strategically. So, I was off this whole week, and then I'm going to go work for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to Mexico for 8 days, and then I'm working for 3 weeks, and then I'm off another week. And so it's about, you get to decide, right? And based on whatever your venture is or whatever your space is, you get to decide how much you want to work or put into it. And again, based on whatever your goals are. Because for some people, like, it would be easy for me and Jesse to just say, what we've realized is he and I alone can easily run a $750,000 a year business. Just the two of us. We don't need anyone else. But that's not our goals. That's not how I see the company. Like, I see the company as roughly a $2.5 to $4.5 million a year business, but we can't get there alone. So we knew we needed a team, we needed to scale. And so we're doing those things now. But it's about understanding your market, understanding your customers, understanding the need, understanding your capacity, because it's been hard. Like, growing and scaling is hard because now you're having to also be a manager, be a leader, not just do stuff that works for you, but now I'm trying to coordinate everyone's lives, and it's a lot, but it's fun. And again, I don't know, Nicole, I don't want to ramble too much about it because I know I am, but the freedom is such an important piece. Especially, I saw an interesting piece of data that said by the time we're 35 years old, 95% of our life is on autopilot. We do the same thing over and over every day. And so many people are unhappy. And so when you talk about freedom, I stepped off that hamster wheel. There's no automation anymore. Yes, I do my trainings. Yes, I do consulting. Yes, I do speaking gigs. Yes, I'm writing a book right now that just got, we just got the proposal finished. Like, everything's going well, but I still have freedom in the sense that, like, I can just do what I want. And if I want to scale back or slow down or change something, I can. And I'm not having to rely on someone else telling me that I can't do something or I can't take off.
That is amazing. And if that stat where by the time you're 35 years old, you're on autopilot, that stat kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Good.
What I love about being an entrepreneur most is that no 2 days look the same. And I'm sure you can attest to that. And so I always wanted to ask you this question. What makes military veterans predisposed to becoming entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I think it's there's a couple of things, but the two main things that stick out to me are, one, when you're in the military, well, you understand it's a hierarchy. There's order of operations. Everything has a process. Everything has a procedure. I mean, down to like the type of pen you use and the notebook you get issued and the way your hair is and the way your uniform is. And like, everything is thought for you. And you become so regimented that you're used to working in a system. And what is business? What is entrepreneurship? It's understanding systems. Mm-hmm. It's creating a system and understanding how to flow through that. So I think military members and veterans, when they leave that, there's two things. One is, I'm really structured, I'm regimented, I'm disciplined, because my life for 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, has been so structured that now I can just roll this over into whatever venture I want to pursue. And then the second thing is, they are ready to be on their own because they're simultaneously tired of being told what to do, which is why you see so many military people when they retire, they grow ponytails and wild beards. And it's like, for the first time, they can actually express themselves. And I think it's super similar in first responder profession, right? There's still a lot of rules and standards and how you have to be groomed and all these things. That there's a lot of parallels. And so a lot of first responders, same thing. When they leave the job, they change their appearance, they grow out these long hairs and beards and all this stuff because they want to express themselves. I think it's natural for human beings to want to have their own identity. But when you join the military and first responder professions, you lose that. Your identity becomes part of the whole. It's your identity belongs to the branch. Your identity belongs to the uniform. Your identity belongs to the department. Then when you get away from that, it's like, okay, well, who am I? And that's scary for some people, right? This idea of, and it's why I think we have such a high suicide rate, not only in policing, but in retirees and in the military, is once they separate, they have no identity outside of that. And so then they become very afraid. So it's kind of a sharp edge with a slippery slope, because some people will do really well and succeed because they want to pursue something they've always wanted to do. Or the others are lost. They don't have a sense of identity. They don't know who they are, what they want to do. And then they just kind of spiral out of control into a dark space where they feel isolated and depressed. So I think it's important to understand those transition periods. But military members are very, very good at entrepreneurship typically. And I think the numbers are really, really astronomical as far as how many military veterans own businesses. But again, it makes sense to me because of those parallels with you have to wake up, you have to do the job, you've got to be responsible, you have to be reliable, you have to be of your word. You can't just be a lip service. Like, you have to follow through because people are holding you accountable, whether it's customers, clients, whoever. And so you have, like, all those things translate. The only difference typically, especially if you're doing it well, is you're going to get paid a lot more. That's a big difference.
Yeah. I always wondered that the connection between being a military veteran and being an entrepreneur, because I think I caught the entrepreneurship bug from my father, who served in the military for 27 years. And he went right into entrepreneurship right after he retired. And so what is the difference between, I know you mentioned this earlier, being a wantrepreneur and an entrepreneur? Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah. And I think real quick on the point about your dad, I think it's awesome that he planted that seed in you also. I think one of the parallels also is this idea of like risk taking, especially in the military in the last 22 years, right? I mean, since 9/11, but if you can go before that, 91 and all the wars, you become, everything is biology, right? I like to say everything in our world comes down to neurochemistry. And what I learned through all my years of therapy was that when I'm in a firefight, a life or death situation, my dopamine is like flying off the charts. Well, how can I recreate that in my own life without abusing substances, having a porn addiction, or things that are actually hurting me that give you similar dopamine, by the way? It's risk taking. It's adrenaline seeking. It's these things that, like, it's why so many military members go into high adrenaline sports because they're seeking that dopamine rush that they would get from fighting in a combat zone. So entrepreneurship creates that in a relatively safe way, where if I fail, I'm probably not going to die. I'm just going to lose an opportunity, money, something, but it's not going to risk my life. But I'm still going to, when I get a win, when I succeed, when I pursue something, when I have a vision and I actually fulfill it, that is a incredible dopamine rush, oxytocin, all the things that feel good in our brain that give us these, oh my goodness, I'm a great person, when we do the things we set out to do. A wantrepreneur it's something that Jesse and I were labeled for a couple of years because, again, we were claiming to be entrepreneurs because we started a company, but we had a full-time, quote unquote, 9 to 5, right? We had a job. We were both career police officers. And so when you have a full-time job where you have a safety net, I could call into work when I was a police officer tomorrow, and I'm going to still get paid next Friday the same amount. I could take 4 days off and I'm still going to get paid the same amount. I could be a pretty terrible officer, get written up, but because there's a union protection and all this other stuff, I'm still going to get paid. There's so much safety in that really kind of goes against risk taking. Now, in entrepreneurship, if I take off 4 days, but I have stuff to do, that's going to create a big problem. There's going to be a really negative ripple effect from that, where I'm going to lose a client. I won't close a deal. We'll lose an opportunity to someone else because they worked harder. And so it really is you against you. And just like it is Jesse against Jesse, we're in the same company. But right now, this week, he's been on a little staycation with his family, and I love it. But we also can't just step away from it. My email doesn't stop. I have to I have clients for schools next week that are needing things. And so even when we're trying to take time for ourselves, we're still having to show up. The difference between a wantrepreneur and entrepreneur is, instead of just wanting to do it, you're actually doing it. You don't have a safety net. You don't have something to fall back on. It is, I will either do this and succeed, or I got to go back to my hamster wheel, my safety net, and get a job where I can become dependent or reliable on the man or the woman who is paying me, taking care of me, even during my subpar moments. In entrepreneurship, you're fully exposed, but that's the beauty in it too, right? Is you get to celebrate your wins just as you get to celebrate your failures, and you have to take it all on the chin. You don't get to displace blame because everything is your fault as an entrepreneur. And I think that's super important to understand.
Yeah. So that is the perfect segue into my last question that I actually ask everyone on my podcast. So what is your definition of success?
Yeah, I love this question because I've been thinking about this. So when we talked, you brought this up and it really made me think okay, I want to spend time with this. And so what is success to me it's simple and yet complex, like everything in my head. So the best I could come up with for me, because I really sat with this question, Nicole, since we talked a week ago, it's the ability to stand fully present in the moment and being proud of where you are while simultaneously being excited for tomorrow. Now, why do I say that second part? Because when I was a police officer, especially the last couple of years, I hated tomorrow. Every night I would dread the next day. I'm trying to fall asleep and I'm dreading tomorrow. Not because I didn't like the job. I loved the work that I got to do with the police department. I just could not stand the lack of leadership, the mistreatment of people because of fractured egos, because of just people who are so afraid and just it was a nightmare. And so because of all the terrible things that were happening in and around, and this was the beauty of me being in therapy too, was my therapist actually made me pick a date and said, you're going to leave. And I was like, what? But she helped me with that transition. So to me, success is being able to stand in the present, being proud of, like, did I give everything today? Did I do everything that I could have done? Did I do my best today, right now in this moment? Am I where I want to be? And am I excited about tomorrow? Because it's the old saying is, the good news is in 10 years, you're going to arrive. But the question is where? Question is where? And so if we can think about it like that, if you dread tomorrow, check in with yourself. Like, why is it that you are hating the idea of tomorrow? To me, success is the freedom to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, where you want, and embracing tomorrow as it comes instead of wishing it was anything different than what it was.
I love that. That is so powerful. I believe that definition has all the right elements to it. I can tell that you put a lot of thought into that. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
So Joe, it was such a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm really excited about what's ahead for the future for you.
Me too. I'm hyped up. We have a lot going on. We have a federal contract we're working through. We have multiple schools going. We're growing. There's very exciting things, but again, to me, it's all connection based. If I can just leave your audience with one thing that is super important that I learned along this journey. When Jesse and I were entrepreneurs, when we had our business, but we also had full-time jobs, our pursuit 100% was financial. It was all about just making some extra money. When we pivoted, we became full-time entrepreneurs. Money is nowhere near the top of our list of things that we're actually pursuing. And we had to shift the pivot. When I stopped worrying about money, I made more than I've ever seen in my life because that was no longer the focus. My focus was on client relationships. It was on management of human beings. It was on connection and establishing what we call connections before cash, right? And understanding, like, it's like what we do in policing. How we teach de-escalation is connection before correction. You can't just show up and order people around. You have to have a connection established. That's all business is. Your network is your net worth. So it's really about surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, but also that challenge you, that don't think like you, so that we can stay open and soft and learn from others. But don't just chase money, because it's an empty road. It's like chasing a bullet. You're not going to catch up to it. And then when you have it, you're going to realize you're still the same person, because if you can't manage $10, you can't manage $10 million. And so there's a lot of people who aren't actually prepared for financial freedom. And so you have to really think about those things before you get to the actual place where you're wanting to go. Otherwise, you're going to quickly lose it all. And so I just wanted to share that piece with your audience because I think it's super important.
Absolutely. That is such sound advice. And thank you so much for sharing that. And Joe, I cannot wait to do this again. And I cannot wait to hear more about your progress. And where can people find SolutionPoint Plus if they wanted to be more involved or learn more about it?
Yeah, thanks. So our website is SolutionPoint Plus, all spelled out. On social, we are on Facebook, Instagram, we're all the places. I'm at Joe Smarro. Twitter is the Joe Smarro. But Instagram is Joe Smarro, Facebook's Joe Smarro. And then also if anyone's interested in like looking at some of our courses, we put those online, and that is just courses.solutionpointplus.com. No www. I don't know why it's like that, but courses.solutionpointplus.com or www.solutionpointplus.com. Those are the websites and where you can find us. And again, thank you so much, Nicole. This has been great. I love talking with you. I'm super excited about where you're going as well. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joe.
That's it for this week's episode of Inner Wealth. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and that you'll join us next week as we continue to explore all the ways success is being redefined in our ever-changing world. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite podcast app, and follow us on Instagram at Forbes Ignite for more thought-provoking content and opportunities to engage with us. I'm your host, Nicole Cacal. Thanks for joining us.